Welcome everyone to the 11th episode of Mechs on Deck. Today we are talking about some holy pandas, but before we get into that, we've got a couple things for you. If you haven't been tuning into our streams Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time at twitch.tv/mechsondeck, you would know that we are now sponsored by SwitchMod. So
put those hands down.
The hands are coming down. Hashtag not sponsored meme is now dead. We are officially sponsored by Crawlbit himself with switchmod.net, I believe is what it is.
Or switchmod.net.
And you can use our code MECHSONDECK to get 4% off everything in the store, except for group buys. Does not run on group buys. But I believe he has some pre-orders up for some lube. You want to feel a little greasy, lube it up. Lube those holy pandas we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Get you some. And then second, before we get in, I think, Chewy, I think you got some mail.
I have a little bit of mail. I was really excited about this. So Summit Cables posted a few weeks ago on Mech Market. And I was looking for something a little different. I have a coiled, basically GMK camping colorway. But I want something a little different. Because, right now I'm using the Modern Dolce. I don't know why I couldn't think of Modern Dolce, but Modern Dolce with green and red doesn't really go with gray and blue, gray and teal. So I see if I can get a better view of this. Boom. It's a Summit Cables. This is the Hyperfuse paracord. I think that's what they called it. I got a little gray accent type C coil. By the way, if you're curious, I use like a little sonic straw. And so instead of it going limp, it just keeps the coil nice and neat. But yeah, big shout out Summit Cables. They're in our Discord. Yeah, it's really quality made cable. So excited to have it. Might be passing this along to someone who has Hyperfuse, though. Early birthday present, but who knows? Who knows?
We'll see.
So
we'll see.
But yeah, holy pandas. Wore my shirt and everything.
The panda magic.
The panda magic is here because the pandas are here and there are so many of them.
There are. And we're like kind of on the eve of the redo, the redux. Yeah,
the drop pandas.
The drop pandas. They've run them twice now. But yeah, so we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, where did these pandas start? Where did they come from?
All right. So, quick history. I will link the full description of. So, Quakeums actually did a very nice text review of kind of the history of, but we are bringing it out. Basically, a company called Inver, or a man, I don't actually know if it's a company. I think that just might be the company who made a linear switch in late 2016. It was just a small group buy. They only sold about 10,000 switches. It was a linear switch, and was not received 100%. Not a whole lot of people. They thought it was scratchy. They thought, most people thought that it was not ideal compared to something like just like a standard MX Black or, I don't know if Telios were out yet, but especially, just a lot of these linear switches were doing a lot better. And these were a little pricier just because it was a group buy. So it was not as cheap as something like, Cherry could make a very nice, a very cheap switch with the MX Black, and a lot of people like those. So it kind of just died out, and there was never a round two or anything like that. So in late 2017, Quakeums, who received a bunch of Halo switches, HALO, from Massdrop. It was a Massdrop input club. That's a whole nother story. But there is some there's some rough around the edges situations that were going on there with IP, but he was modding some switches and decided to try and put in the Halo stem inside of the Panda housing. And then the Holy Panda was born. He decided that it was an extremely tactile switch, and he kind of spread the word, and then it kind of spread like wildfire from then on. So late 2017 into 2018, we saw the pinnacle at the time of tactile switches. So the main question that we will start off with are, why are these so special?
Yeah, so there's a couple like key things that make these switches different in the way that they function, and especially with like the Halo itself. There's a longer stem on the Halo switches, and that really changes the way that the switch feels and the way that it reacts when you're pressing it. As well as it does have a very unique bump in the way that it's done. When the Halo switches first came out, there were actually quite a few people who didn't like them because they felt different. They didn't feel like what tactile switches had felt like at the time. So they actually, even the Halo switches, they kind of boomed at first and then weren't as popular for a while. Especially even when they went in to make it a Heiko revision of them as well. Kind of had the same thing.
And really quick, sorry to interrupt, but if you can see, the bump actually does not go down all the way. So that's like big proof right here that the stem doesn't actually go down all the way. And I promise I am pressing it all the way down, where this is just the standard Zelio V2, where the stem does go actually all the way down. So that's kind of, when we're talking about a longer stem, that's one big thing prevent.
Yeah, and then overall they just had a tight housing with the actual inverse switches were a very, very tight tolerance switch in general. And they paired well with the Halo stem. Sometimes if you mix switches of different brands, the different tolerances can make a switch that doesn't normally have as much wobble have more wobble, which we talked about in our stream on Wednesday a little bit about wobble and whatnot. And those tighter tolerances made it to where when you combine the two, there's not as much wobble to them at all. They're pretty tight. Even the like new versions that are not made off of the same original molds, more or less, they are still a super solid switch, not super wobbly.
Mm-hmm. So the next thing, which with tactility, kind of the biggest draw to this is the bump. It is an incredibly prominent bump. It's very, very tactile, but it's very rounded, and it's towards the top. So it's just something that not that many switches had yet. And so with that rounded, smooth bump, as opposed to kind of a sharper bump that we've talked about once again last week on the Box Royals, there's a sharper bump where this is a rounder, more, kind of a smoother experience to the feel of it. And with doubling down on how, people have achieved a rounder bump, but with how big the bump is, made it very, very appealing to a lot of people, because at that point, you kind of want to feel like you're typing on something. A lot of times with people who like tactiles, they want to feel the bump. And so something that smooth, but that, long, and that hints of a bump was just something that people, I guess, didn't really realize they wanted until they tested it. So, and then the next thing is, the sound signature. So this is a very, it's a very thocky sound. I say thocky, I can, like a Zelio V2 is kind of light because it's just plastic housing, where the Inver is very loud. It's very deep compared to most switches. That's due to the housing. I want to say it's nylon. I should know this. I apologize.
I feel like you've had that exact same.
I think I've said that like 4 times now. But it creates a very nice sounding board. There are just not a lot of switches that sound like it, and a lot of switches, up other than clicky, there's really not a big difference in most switches sound wise until you kind of get into these, non-plastic housings. And so people, on top of going, man, not only does this feel good, this sounds amazing. And that's just something people were wanting. And I think that's another thing that, when you're at a meetup or you're watching a video and you just hear all this just kind of noise, you're like, what is happening? That sounds amazing. And, as long as you're not working in an office full of people with terrible annoyances to keyboards, that could be something that is like a home run for you.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. It's actually, and this is what I had thought. They're made of palm. The original.
Okay, so my apologies.
The original Pandas were made of palm, and I'm actually looking at the initial group buy post here, where he talks about the goal of the project was to create the smoothest possible factory linear switch, which I can say that they definitely didn't quite hit the mark there on that one. But they did give us something that was quite awesome.
They tried to make the smoothest linear switch and gave us, at the time, the best tactile switch ever.
Well, and I think it's true even with like the Novelty's cream switches that have come out since then that almost have a similar like style of build, being all palm housing and everything. Those are pretty scratchy switches as well. So I don't know if palm necessarily was the best idea when it comes to trying to make the smoothest switch in the world, but
yeah, and when you lube them, it's great, but factory lube can only go so far without the switches being $4 a switch, basically. So, and then the last thing that made them, this is obviously pre Revolution, which we'll go into in a little bit. They were incredibly hard to obtain. Because you had to, this was one of the first times, not first times, because a lot of people have made other kind of Franken switches, but you had to obtain 2 separate switches, of both of which were relatively hard to get, especially the Panda, the actual housings, because they only made about 10,000 and then they stopped. They never made around 2. So hard to obtain. And then the last thing I think that makes these switches very unique, now drop is kind of ruining this, but you have to build the switches. So, we talk about building a keyboard and how it's a satisfying experience and it's a fun thing to do. And now you're adding in this extra factor of like, oh, not only did I make this board, I made these switches from random parts. And I talked about this recently, but like whenever I got my Holy Jesus switches, I was able to build them from 3 separate switches, and it was a very satisfying experience because I was able to not only put all this work into the switches, I put a lot of work into the board as well.
Yeah, it's a feeling of uniqueness for your board and for you. It's very, very different than just buying a switch and throwing it in there. The fact that you get to tear apart whatever switches you want to put together to make these. I know you, for instance, made traditional Holy Pandas and then realized, 67 gram springs is not my jam. I'm going to throw in some 78s, and ended up liking it a lot better. So yeah, there's definitely that feeling there that makes it a little bit nicer. With that, the scarcity that you talked about a little bit, it made it hard. This was a switch that really it took off, but was hard to obtain and was extremely scarce on both ends. I think even the Halo switches themselves were harder to find especially as Input Club went further into making switches and basically made box switches after this. Like, I know for the longest time you couldn't really find the Halo switches without having to like get them secondhand.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, if you think about this comparatively, the T1 switch is a scarce switch right now, and they made over 20,000.
Yeah.
And that's a scarce switch. So there was under half of that of how many Inver Pandas there were running around. So there were probably more Halo stems, but when we say Halo stems, I forgot to mention, basically there's the Halo Clear and the Halo True, and the stem's the same, it's just a different color. So there were probably more stems going around, but with only 10,000 housings, there's only so many you could.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And basically, these switches, because of that scarcity, the price of them kind of shot up. You were looking at already $2 just at like MSRP level for the actual Panda housings and the Halo switches combined. So when the scarcity started getting realized and everyone was like, oh, these holy Panda things are real and they are awesome, the good old friend mech market prices shot up like crazy.
Like it's up to like $6 sometimes per switch. You see $550 for 10, and then you're like, man, it's kind of an expensive switch. $6 per switch.
Yeah.
That would mean for a $60 or for a HHKB, which is a 60 switch layout. Quick math, what, $360 just for switches? And then throw that on top of, a relatively mid-range board like the TX60. Before you even get to caps, you're at $750.
Yeah, you're looking at $1,000 for a board. That's like a mid to high tier board. It's not like anything special.
Which you could get, Cherry MX Blacks, which a lot of people like, for $30, so $330 off for a different switch.
Yeah,
just onto this board. Like, that's insane. That is crazy that was a thing. I remember, we were talking about it, and I was like, I just don't see. I'm known between myself and Eric, I'm known for spending too much money on something stupid. And he was like, just don't get Pandas. And I was like, I don't think I could ever spend that much just on switches alone. I don't mind, with the $2 I don't mind kind of, hashing out some extra money for that. But I mean, at what point do you just kind of look at it and go, that's absolutely not worth it? And some people might think it is worth it. And some people, I'm sure there are people out there that have they spent over $1,000 for their 60% board, which more power to them, I guess. But,
yeah,
with these great switches, but kind of a lead into that, the market eventually crashed.
Yeah.
So
yeah, basically. And it's not like it crashed because things got bad. Obviously, it's just because there's more alternatives, not just in the new versions of the Holy Pandas, but other switches got better, like the Zeal V2s and the the T1 and a different echelon of switch. I wouldn't say it's quite as nice as a Holy Panda, but it's reaching for it. It's the budget. It's the baby brother.
It's one of those, if the Holy Panda didn't exist, the T1 would be one of the best switches.
Yeah.
And the Zelio V2 would be probably the best switch. And of tactile, heavy bump tactile.
Yeah, and the thing you had these people who were, obviously like Quakems, who created the Switch. At that time it was him and Huey doing the top clack stuff, and they loved him and talked about him all the time, and other prominent members getting on the backs of the Holy Panda hype train. And I mean, rightfully so. It's a fantastic Switch, but it really popped that price up there. So, and then we had the late 2018, early 2019 downfall of the OG Pandas.
Supervan came busting through the door. So, backtracking just a smidge, after the relatively, so it was a year before the Holy Panda was created and the Panda linear switch was made. So there was a big year difference. So with how it was just kind of like, the linear switch, we don't really like this, whatever. They decided to just get rid of the molds. The molds to make the switches, to make them exactly the same. So at the time, it was stated that the molds were destroyed, which is another reason why I was like, well, these switches, there's only going to be so many. And after people can keep soldering and resoldering, you might damage a few. So Supervan comes along and says, hey, I've got the molds. I'm going to make these switches, these second round of Holy Pandas. Through the Geek Hat thread, they were called Holy Jesuses. I don't remember the exact reason other than just the fact that they thought it was funny. But he sent those out. To, because it was immediately a lot of people. You have a couple different people. One going, well, I know that the molds were made and then they were destroyed. And I know that, these are, you're going after you're making a very bold claim to say, hey, I can recreate this amazing switch. And on top of all of that, you have people that have invested $400, $500 in all these switches and going, wait a minute, time out. Now you're saying that you're going to be selling these for $1 a switch. So people got upset. I mean, you can say rightfully, I would say, it's just, you're just trying to not have buyer's remorse. You're trying to make sure that and it's a lofty claim.
Yeah, it is.
But he sent out these switches, and I remember watching the live stream. Nathan Kim built them and was like, well, they're the same. They're basically the same. If they're not 100%, they're 98%. And here we are. But there's a lot, that kind of crashed that market, and it angered a lot of people. I don't want to say rightfully so, because at the end of the day, this guy was like, hey, I found the switch and I want to make it, and then fronted the money to make a bunch. So, he did it. And, I'm sorry that unfortunately the information was not 100% there and you spent a lot of money on it. But, so during all this, I remember talking to Eric about the Jesus switch, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to get in on him. Why not? Some other companies stepped in.
Yeah.
I'll let you take it away.
Yeah.
We had long conversations about everything that was happening.
Yeah. So we had it was just weird. It was the same time. So I mentioned the novelties creams switches earlier, which I think initially was meant to be like a alternative. Like it's hey, here's something that we made that's similar, but is obviously different. I think initially that was kind of the plan with that switch, because the Pacos are, when you make Pacos, they do feel good. They are a great tactile switch, but obviously not a Holy Panda. So we had that happen, and then Supervan came out with his, and then we had the Mass Drop at the time, but Drop come out and say, not only can we do Holy Pandas, we can have them be actual branded Inver Holy Pandas. We have the molds. This is another claim of saying they have the molds. And there was quite a bit of drama with this one, because they ended up sending out some switches that they said were test samples, and they weren't. They were OG Holy Pandas that they were just kind of trying to pass off to people as being a actual new production line of pandas. And so there's quite a bit of drama.
They're trying
there
to build some hype.
Yeah. And
in the worst way possible.
Mass Drop also got involved, and they saw the ability to make some extra cash off of the new Holy Panda craze. And they started stocking the Halo switches, both the clear and the true. And they're still up. It's been an indefinite time that they've kept those switches up there. You can go buy them today and get them in, and I'm sure they've made a killing off of Supervan releasing these, and then the Yak Pandas coming out as well.
Yeah, the mass drop. I mean, there are lots of winners and losers here of people who bought or sold pandas at the right or wrong time. Mass drop's a big winner, though.
Yeah,
they saw that and they're like, I remember when they made that. I had already had some. They ran a very small, like 2-day, or not even 2 days. It was like a 1-day flash sale of Halo switches. I was like, oh, I should get in on these because they're not that expensive, and maybe one day. Maybe one day. And so I bought them, and I had these Halo Trues just sitting in a box. And I remember I saw when the Jesus switches, after they were like, yep, this is going to be 100% a group buy, Mastrop immediately put up Halo switches to buy. I'm like, that's brilliant, because Supervan's not technically selling a Holy Panda. He's just selling half of it.
Yeah.
I guess two-thirds of it. And they put that up, and then they were like, all right, cool, we're going to make these drop pandas now, which should be shipping at the end of this month.
Hopefully.
We'll be doing a good review, and we'll do we'll be doing a review and a comparison between the Holy Jesus, the Holy Red Panda is the only one that I have. Although I did get some Trash Panda. I haven't even told you that because I got that last night right before I went to bed.
I was actually thinking about buying some this morning.
I have a bunch of Halo stems just sitting, and I was like, why not? But we'll do a little comparison against the drop pandas, the Holy Jesus, and the red pandas, or just the Yak pandas. But basically, during all of this, Novel Keys comes out huge. And it's like, hey, you might have missed out on the Jesus switch, which the Jesus switch was actually run as like a kind of more traditional group buy of like, get on this Google form, pay this dude and hope for the best. And shipping was kind of rough because it was a lot of people in certain areas of the world were not getting the switches for like months. I got mine pretty quick, luckily, but it was a very strange situation shipping. But Novel Keys, who most people, especially in America, love, was like, hey, we're going to make these red Holy Panda housings. And Mastrop sitting there just licking their lips going, ha.
Yeah.
Sweet, more sales. So now we are sitting as late 2019. Or I'm sorry, not late.
Early
to mid 2019. And we have Holy Mints, which is and really Yak in Novel Keys made these. I was just making different color variations for fun because why not? But we've got Holy Red Pandas, Holy Mint Pandas, Holy Trash Pandas. All three are the same thing with a different housing. We've got Holy Jesuses. We've got Clear Holy Jesus relatively soon. We've got the drop. We've had 2 drop or mass drop Holy Panda switches.
Runs, yeah.
So much.
There's a lot of them.
Shirts.
You got shirts,
come on,
stickers.
Come on. I mean, we're out here in the. It is a great time to be getting into the hobby and wanting an awesome experience with switches, because I will say that I did not have that like holy grail moment of having a board I enjoyed typing on until like maybe the Zelio V2.
Mm-hmm. Which is funny because the Zelio V2, which I guess we can kind of get into that now.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
That released like 2 or 3 months before the Supervan post. Like,
I think they went to group buy in August. I want to say August or September. They started going into group buy, and then they shipped like a few weeks after they announced the Jesus switch.
Yeah, it was like pretty close to each other whenever, and it not. I don't feel bad for Zeal that this happened. He still sells tons of switches, especially with the recent promo he did. But he came out and said that the V2 is more tactile than a Holy Panda. which is a bold statement.
He pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah.
Lots of people. Because once again, people go, well, I've got the $6 Switch. It's got to be the best.
Yeah. And that was really at the time when they were at their peak, because this whole revolution and resurgence of the Holy Panda market kind of came out of nowhere. It's not like we had a situation where someone was like, oh, I found the molds. Let me find someone who can do them. It was just like, nope, I have it, and I'm going to make these switches. Mm-hmm. And it was just like out of nowhere. It's not like there was a whole bunch of preemptive talks before that. No one was setting out trying to go on a panda trip and make these pandas happen. So it is kind of funny how it all works out with between the V2 and then of course the T1 coming in on the panda craze as well. That whole Switch was built around trying to compete with the Holy Panda. Like the entirety of the Switch is meant to feel as close to a Holy Panda as possible. Like it was never even like a question. It was posted on the description for the Switch.
We were trying to recreate the feel of a Holy Panda. And that's what everyone was going after. I mean, it was the king, and people are like, well, let's take down the king. I mean, and what's great, this is the epitome of competition breeds innovation. Zelio V2 switches are some of the best switches out there, especially stock. Stock switches are unbelievable. They are a relatively high price, but you compare to a Holy Panda, you're actually going to be spending less on a Zelio V2. So all these people are kind of gunning for the Holy Panda, and now we have, unfortunately, the T1, if you've listened to our past podcasts, are no longer a thing, but we have the Zelio V2, which has created some of the best switches, in my opinion, and we have all these Holy Pandas. So this competition of trying to push all these things forward, my apologies, smacked my really helped the creators and the innovators of this community try and strive for something, and that is fantastic for our community.
Yeah, and I think when we start talking about like the community aspect of it, I think that having the resurgence of the Switch and having all the new companies getting in and being able to benefit off of, this fantastic Switch and the fantastic, discovery that Brian from Top Clack made in terms of putting the actual initial Holy Panda together. I think it's great. I don't necessarily think that, I understand people being upset about the fact that, oh, hey, I spent $5 on these Switches and now they're worth, basically retail. Someone can recreate them. I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that because it's better for the community as a whole for people to be able to experience these things. Mm-hmm. The fact that I think having Switches that are so niche that no one gets to experience them, it's not fun for everyone. It doesn't help build the community. I think this has done more for the community in the past couple months than a lot of the releases that we've had. Because Switches are something that every keyboard needs. Not everyone's into the same layouts. Not everyone's into the same keycap designs, but everyone needs Switches.
Yep. It's great. I mean, we already have exclusivity with boards. Mm-hmm. Why do we need exclusivity with Switches as well? And we have exclusivity with keycaps. Why can't, we all just, have this Switch that doesn't need to be $6 per Switch? Yeah. And that's I'm so happy that, right now on this little Switch tester, by the way, you should get a Switch tester. I've got a Holy Red Panda lubed with Cristo 111. I've got a Holy Jesus Switch or Holy Panda, which they're they're all Holy Pandas. Luba 3204, and I've got another set. I'm going to have 3, probably 4 sets of Holy Pandas, which is great. And I'll have 2 sets of Zelia V2s, which is great. So I have all these awesome switches that are hard to get, and I really say the only switches that I can think of that are hard to get are like vintage blacks because they're old.
Yeah, or like Alps,
and you
switches.
can get or Alps, which that's, if you want to go that way, go by all means, go for the Alps switches. But you're just severely, you're not only limited, with vintage blacks, you can at least use normal keycaps. Alps is a whole nother story.
Yeah, you got to get a specific plate and caps and all that. That's a trip. That's a trip you got to go on to deal with Alps. But I guess what I'm getting at with it too is that in a situation like Alps, you're talking about switches that were made in like the 80s. You're talking about a company that doesn't even do switches anymore. Whereas at the time when Holy Pandas were $5-6, the Halo switches were still being produced, and the Pandas were only a year and a half old. And so it's like what you're saying, do we need the exclusivity in a Switch that's not even 2 years old yet? I don't think so. I think this is great. I love the fact that you probably have your 4 different Holy Panda sets are all, cost less than what someone would have spent on Holy Pandas this same time last year.
Absolutely.
I think that's incredible.
I mean, and it's great. We've seen people in our Discord who are like, yeah, I got Holy Pandas, and oh my God, this is amazing. Like, now I'm going to need to get another board or something like that. Or just, you see them, when we go, hey, I suggest either Holy Panda or Zelia V2, kind of take your pick. And I think it's fantastic that, these people are going, hey, I bought this and this is fantastic. So that really does help someone who is new in the community. It pushes them further because you're able to suggest something that's kind of expensive, but not really, and make them have a great experience. And my camera's just about to clip off. Hold on just a minute. Yep. There we go. Sorry. But yeah, so, when we suggest these switches, hey, it's great and you should absolutely try this, and they try it and it feels great. It's like we would never be able to do that. We would never be able to go to a newcomer and go, you're going to have to drop $500 for switches if you want a premium board. Where now someone can go get a Tofu, $200, $250 with some caps, and get a Tofu and some Holy Pandas and round that out to what? $300,
yeah,
probably $310, and have like a great board. And that's amazing. And we need that in the community. And that's why I personally think Holy Pandas, this whole craze, is perfect, and it's great for the community.
Yeah. I'm sure it's annoying for some people, but and some people it's probably annoying for different reasons. I know some people get tired of having to, talk about Holy Pandas and build boards with them, especially some of the people who are, build boards for content or for a living. They're like, man, I got to build another Holy Panda board. Give me something different. But I think it's great because, like you said, having more of something that's good is always good for the community. It always will make it move forward. It gets people into modding switches, obviously, unless you're buying them from drop, which I believe they come together. I still haven't seen anything about whether or not they actually do come together, but I think they do. I would assume that they're already pre-pandified. But they do get people into Switch modding and playing around with different things. There are some people who have found out that they like unholy pandas, which is weird. People that are kind of reversing it and putting the Inver Panda stem in the Halo true or clear housing, and they like that combo. So
I got an extra switch lying
That's
around.
another thing. You get build your holy pandas. You could sell the unholy pandas on Mech Market, or hey, I've got a cool linear switch that I also really like. So it's really cool. I think it's great for the community.
It gets people into lubing too.
True.
Because a lubed holy panda. Now, honestly, if you don't lube a holy panda, you're not going to have. It's not going to be as good because you're already having to deal with them. So those stems you're going to be touching, that'd be very difficult to get all those out without rubbing any of the lube off of them. So they're probably going to be a little scratchy, but it gets people into lubing, which is, it's hard to say once you start lubing switches, you can't go back. But I mean, there is a little bit of truth to that where once you experience a very smooth switch, like my Holy Jesus are lubed with 3204, and it's hard to, type on anything that's not kind of, doesn't have that level of lube to it, or just kind of dry. And then you start really noticing the scratchiness to it. So, which I would recommend personally, 3203, which you can get on switchmod.net, or a little shameless plug. Or 3204 is okay, but just know that you're going to lose some tactility immediately, and it just has to break in.
Yeah, so just be light with it. You don't want to cake that on, or you'll lose a little bit too much tactility. So,
but I think that will wrap it up for the Holy Pandas. So for the newcomers, hope you learned a few things. For the people who have been dealing with the Holy Pandas for years, sorry about more Holy Pandas.
Yeah, sorry about more Holy Panda content if you're not into that anymore, because it's been you've been dealing with it for a long time.
Even for us, I would say, like you and I have had multiple conversations like, even more Holy Pandas, like, geez.
Yeah.
More stuff. So,
well, moving on to our keyboard of the week. I'm going to move on over here. All right. So today, Chewy, what do we got?
We have an LZ CLS, CLS-H. So the HHKB. This is a Korean custom keyboard. It's got Gatoron inks in it, lubed with 205 Salt Rock lamp from our Discord. You should guys check him out. I don't have his. I think he has a Twitch stream, I believe. I should check him out at some point. But so we got TX65 springs oiled with the oil that comes with it. Filmed. That's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Put into making just the switches. Got OG double shots from Cherry, which is why you might see that he's got arrow keys on his bottom row, and a TA90 caps lock for just a touch of color. I think this is he's going with a theme which is kind of old-fashioned look with a touch of new. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is not. This is what I get from it. There's an old-fashioned look with a touch of new, and it works perfectly. I've messed with the LZ boards. LZ boards are great. They're essentially a sharper edged TX board. So great board, great caps. I love the look of it. So
yeah, I think it
great. Just all overall awesome.
I think it looks great. I know he has since sending us this photo. I know he got the EPBT slate in from Heine Bush. He got that in and actually put it on this board, which looks good. But I like this. I like the OG Cherry. I like what Chewy said about it, given that old school look with that little bit of new school flair, especially with that acrylic diffuser when you got that plugged in and you can show off that gamery RGB. But no, it's
I'm gonna nickname this board right now. All right, this is gonna be, and if Salt Rock, if you ever make this board again, it's gonna be called the Bride, because this literally something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue.
True.
I don't know what's borrowed on here. Maybe you borrowed some switch films or whatever, or you have maybe next time you build the switches, you borrow some lube from somebody. But that's straight up like something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue.
Yeah. It looks great.
Great board.
It looks great.
Great board.
Congratulations, Salt Rock Lamp. We appreciate the submission.
If you guys want to see if you guys see something on your on Reddit, or if you want to post your boards, we have a channel called Keyboard of the Week. We are now going to only be taking pictures from Keyboard of the Week from that Discord channel. So please, if you see stuff that's cool, post it, because we like talking about it. Just because I'll sit there late at night and scroll through Reddit and see boards that are cool, but I don't talk about it with anybody. I will sit there and talk about it with everybody. I'll try and post some as well. But but if you guys want your board on here, post it, and try and take some nice pics, and we'll get it. We'll eventually get to yours, maybe one day. But yeah, just make sure you post it in that Discord channel.
Yeah, and I think with that, I think that might about wrap it up for this episode, talking about the pandas.
Yeah. So just real quick, one more shout out, switchmod.net. You can use promo code Mechs on Deck for 4% off your order, pending it is not a group buy. They do have some pre-orders going on for 3203 and 3204. Highly recommend 3203 for those holy pandas that you're going to buy now that you've listened to this. 3203, great lube for those switches. Switchmod.net, Mechs on Deck.
Yeah, it helps us out a little bit if you use our promo code. Get a little kickback. So, use code Mechs on Deck. Again, we appreciate you stopping by. If you like this video, hit that like button. If not, you can dislike it, but that might hurt our feelings a little bit. Who knows? Other than that, we do stream every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time on twitch.tv/Mechs on Deck. We have some fun things planned. We actually, this past weekend, did a Jackbox TV stream with some members of our Discord community. If you want to get involved in that next time we do it, definitely join us on Discord. Link to Twitch and Discord will be in the description. But yeah, with that being said, Chewy, is there anything else you want to add?
Buy a Switch tester. That's all. Subscribe. More future content. We like to have fun here.
Keeping it loose.
Oh, I guess, well, no, I'm good. Just being weird. Just being real weird. We got some cool stuff coming up, though.
We really do. We're excited.
We have some. We can't say it quite yet. We'll probably be announcing something that we're doing very soon tomorrow on the live stream, but we've got some really cool stuff coming.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about some things we've got in the works and some things we're going to be giving away. So stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Bye, Switch Tester.
Bye now.